They surrounded the police station in Brooklyn Center. If you've seen the photos of it, if you see what's going on here, it looks like they're prepared for a protracted siege. You have law enforcement officers that have nothing to do with the specific incident of the shooting, the killing of Daunte Wright, who are being attacked by angry people in a mob. Antifa, self-described Antifa members now showing up. This is a lit match thrown into a tinderbox sitting atop a big pool of gasoline. This is a highly combustible situation right now. And everyone needs to just take a step back and think about what's really going on here. The city of Minneapolis has already been through far too much, and the rest of the country has dealt with the reverberations. As you recall, last summer, there were BLM protests that broke out across the country, and it needs to be said more. More people need to know this, need to hear this, that in a year of a pandemic where we had lockdowns and we had people interacting less, far fewer people than in living memory, going to bars and restaurants and subways and being out in public places. So you should expect that the violence rate in the country would be far, far lower than in previous years. Instead, what we had was a massive spike, a rise of murders and other violent crimes, including rapes, sexual assaults, assault with a deadly weapon, a rise across the country not seen in over 20 years. The worst murder rate they're expecting, they still compile the numbers and they'll give us the official data, I believe, in September, the worst murder rate since 1995 nationwide. And there's one major factor in all of this. The George Floyd police incident in Minneapolis, his death, the riots that ensued afterwards, the undermining of police, the call to defund police, and communities becoming less safe as a result. People suffer because of these bad ideas. People suffer because of these lies. We all need to understand this. We need to be honest about it. I know right now that there is that cheap virtue signaling going on all over the place by people who live in safe communities, who don't know crime from a firsthand experience, and who think that standing in solidarity with rioters and looters is somehow making anything better. It actually just makes everything worse. But the ruling class and the elites, members of the Democrat Party, Silicon Valley, corporate America, they are very clear in where their sympathies lie. And there's also, it seems, very little willingness to say to people, stop being reckless, stop saying things that are not true, people with major platforms. Cori Bush, member of Congress, tweeted this out about Officer Potter, who has already resigned and who is now facing criminal culpability. There have been about 15 of these taser firearm mistake shootings that have occurred over the last decade or so. So this has happened before. And in most of the cases, there was no criminal charge, especially if the person, if no one was killed. In a couple of cases, there have been criminal charges, and Officer Potter may very well get an involuntary manslaughter charge as a result. But that's already in process, right? There is an accountability that is going on here that will never be true justice in the sense that you can't bring back Daunte Wright. There's nothing to bring him back to stop that tragic accident from happening. But here's what Cori Bush, member of the House of Representatives, said about all this. She tweeted this. The 26-year veteran cop, former president of the police union, doesn't know the difference between a taser and a gun. And you say more training would have fixed this? Nah. But I bet you would have known the difference if Daunte wasn't a black boy or if he was her loved one. End quote. That's from Representative Cori Bush. That is a inciting, unfair, and deeply unhelpful thing to say right now. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever of racial animus in this incident. In fact, if anything, what we see on video is someone who is clearly trying to do one thing, makes an awful mistake that she is responsible for, and then realizes the error that she's just committed and the tragedy that ensued, and knows that it's too late and she can't take that bullet back. But this has happened before. The timing of this, I mean, beyond just the fact that it's a tragedy in and of itself, but the timing of this right before we're expected to hear about the George Floyd verdict. I mean, rather the Derek Chauvin verdict about the death of George Floyd, which is next week. I mean, the jury could be deliberating as soon as next week. Right now, it would be hard to think of a more tense situation. And people who have platforms, people who have power here in the national conversation should use it responsibly, but we shouldn't expect that to happen, not with today's Democrat Party. We've got an open border. We've got out-of-control spending. We've got real fears of inflation. People are starting to wise up to the fact that the Fauciite consensus is never going to just let us go back to normal, that they're not even really thinking there is such a thing as everyone just stops wearing masks and lives their lives, that they're not going to give up that control. People are starting to see through this Biden administration. And so what do they want here? That's right, an issue of racial justice, according to the left, to rally around to make it seem like there is a righteous cause for the left, when in this case, in this reality, what they're going to do is just create excuses for more destruction, violence, and anarchy in the streets. What was better as a result of BLM riots last year? What improved? Oh, they got the main demand, which was defunding of police in some cities, and crime soared, and people died, and misery spread. It's very straightforward. The cops are not the problem. All right, we have to be adults in America. We have to be willing to say things that are obviously true. We have to fight this effort to shut down your ability to observe what you know to be true. There is a war on observation going on right now. You can't see what's actually true and not true about lockdowns and vaccine policies and all the rest of it. Shut up and do what you're told. You can't see and come to your own conclusions about how crime is getting worse and how BLM activists buy million-dollar mansions for themselves while they're actually supposed to be, helping poor communities and dealing with police relations, right? You're not allowed to notice these things. You're told what to think, and if you disagree, you're shouted down. They're not even trying to convince you of anything anymore. And you're certainly not supposed to notice that BLM as a movement has blood on its hands. You look at what's happened over the last year, over the last 12 months, and because of the defunding of police, because of the change in perception about community police relations, and the fact that law enforcement does not feel backed up in their jobs, more people are dead than would otherwise be. More people have suffered. And what exactly is gained by all this? Defund police, which I know Ben & Jerry's, the ice cream company, has now said that they want to abolish police. Look, they're a bunch of morons who have done far too much to push type 2 diabetes on the country, okay? By the way, boycott them. Let me just throw that out there right now. Don't eat that ice cream. If every person who had a rational view of America and the country, who was center-right, said, I'm not going to buy any more Ben & Jerry's, they may actually feel that a little bit. They may actually realize, shut up and make my, Oreo cookie swirl or whatever it is, whatever they make. I usually can't eat it because they have gluten in a lot of their ice cream. That's the truth. We need to take action or else this stuff continues. Defund the police is moronic. It's a stupid thing to say. There are bad people in this country. There are bad, violent, destructive people of all races and backgrounds. And we all need to be universally held to account for our actions. We cannot break the law. If we become a lawless society, the foundation upon which everything else is built, all of our prosperity and all the good, fun stuff out there and all the systems that we benefit from every day, they all start to crumble if we don't have rule of law. And we are all responsible as individuals, as human beings, for our actions. There is no license to loot or riot or attack. And getting rid of cops is the dumbest thing I have ever heard in a public policy debate. It's honestly the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What are we going to do then? We're going to start sending in social workers? Have they thought this through? Do they think that unarmed social workers are going to want to be involved in violent domestic disputes? You're going to send in a social worker if somebody's calling the police because they're worried that there could be a drive-by in their neighborhood? I'm glad the social worker will be there to say, hey, let's all be nice to each other while the bullets are flying over their heads. Could it be any dumber? No, but this is where the Democrat Party is now. Reckless demagoguery. Brainwashing and stupidity on a national scale to pretend they care so much about minority communities. You know, all these MSNBC anchors who are millionaires who live in very safe areas, who send their kids to private schools, they're the first ones to tell you, oh, but, you know, we don't need so much police, really? They should spend a few nights in the highest crime areas of major cities, especially these days, and walk around the streets and see how they feel about cops after that. I have a feeling it would change their tunes, but it's just a bunch of virtue signaling cowards just reveling in their demagoguery. That's what they do, and that's what they care about. Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.